Gilmore.
Good evening, Toastmasters and guests. So you guys are probably wondering about this title, #LoveLouder. Any of you guys know, like, businesses before used to have taglines, and now taglines are pretty much gone. It's hashtag. So just get rid of the tagline and just put a hashtag in front of it, and that is your business. So before I get started, I'm going to ask permission from all of you guys to be vulnerable and just to speak from my heart. I got up this morning with a message from Chuck saying, give a speech. And I said, no, not ready. And he's like, give a speech anyway. And I'm like, nope, I'm really not ready. And yet my heart was like, oh, I really, really need to give this speech. And I looked at my schedule and was like, oh my goodness, my day is packed. I have no time in my schedule today to sit down and write a speech. So what am I going to do? And this came to my mind, Love Louder. And I was like, oh, yeah, I got to do it. And then tonight, the theme of this meeting, right, is feel the fear, do it anyway. So I'm standing here because I'm feeling the fear and I'm doing it anyways because I have a message that speaks so loudly to me that I'm just sharing from my heart with no practice, okay? Fair enough? You guys get that? So what is Love Louder? It's not a romantic love, not in any way, shape, or form. Have any of you ever read Louise Hay's books? Louise Hay? Okay. So Louise Hay says that love transforms, love heals. Has anybody ever heard that? I believe that love and fear cannot exist in the same body. You either have one or the other, love or fear. If you have love in your body and you are love, then it requires you to be vulnerable. It requires you to forgive yourself and to forgive others. It requires you to release judgment of yourself and judgment of others. It requires you to step fully into who you are with confidence and do the thing that you were called to do. Fear, on the other hand, is going to keep you stuck. It's going to keep you in victim mentality. It's going to keep you feeling the fear and staying stuck and not moving. Fear can paralyze you. You can get up every day and you can choose to feel love or you can choose to feel fear. And you have the choice. You get to make that decision. Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. Well, if love transforms, then we need to be louder at loving. So that's my message, love louder. So this starts for me about 3 years ago. Up until that point in my life, I shared my story with you guys before on one of my speeches. I had been through some life-changing events. I lost my business, my health went downhill, and I lost my identity. I found myself searching for who I was really. Who am I really? And I came across this concept of love. Not a romantic love, just love of loving yourself. It was so foreign to me, like, love myself, really, you know? Because I was a perfectionist and I was into all this other stuff. And love was not something that was discussed growing up, you know, about loving. Our father never said it. We didn't say it to our siblings. I never said I love you to my siblings growing up. I would say it to my mom, right? I didn't say it to my siblings. So this was a foreign concept to me. But I was willing to get uncomfortable and step out of my comfort zone and into vulnerability and say, okay, what does this look like? So I came across this phrase that says, love all people in all situations. Wow, that's kind of big, right? That's a big comment. So my daughters and I start this challenge where we are going to love all people in all situations. So taking them to school in the morning, we would talk about it. Today, I'm going to ask you to love all people in all situations. Can you do that? And, you know, they were having some challenges because this is all new to them too, but they're young, they can handle it. So this was challenging, and we were coming up against some difficulties. So I'm like, how can I learn through them? Like, how can they be my teacher and I be their teacher? So we started doing this thing where they would come home from school in the afternoon, and it was like, instead of saying to your kids, how was school today, right? I would be like, okay, if a spaceship, alien spaceship came to your school and hovered above your school and said, I want 3 kids from every classroom, which 3 kids would you send up? And my youngest would be like, well, so-and-so, 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 and I'd be like, wow, that's pretty profound, right? And so I would say, why? And they were like, well, she's mean, she makes fun of my teeth, or she does this, she does that, right? And so then I'll be like, well, let's just think about this for a minute. Do you think that there's something going on at her house that's causing her to be mean? And 9 times out of 10, my kids would tell me a story of what that child was going through at that time in their life that was causing them to come to school and be unkind to them. And so we uncovered this process of hurt people, right? When you're hurting, you hurt other people. So what if I said to my daughter, you go to school and you show her love, even when she's hurting you, what if you show her love? What does that look like for you? And we started doing that. And over the last 3 years, the changes that I've seen in my daughters and the changes that I've seen in my life have been profound. So if I can come here tonight and say one thing, and leave you guys with one thing, would be to love louder. Love when it's uncomfortable. You pull up to a stop sign and there's a guy on the side of the road with a sign, you know what we do? We always keep either fresh water or crackers or money in the car, because I pull up to that guy and I look at him and I'll hand him something and I'll say, I love you. And some stand there and look at me like I'm absolutely lunatic in my mind, and some people say, I love you too. The truth is, here's the truth. They were born lovable, guys. They have a heart just like we have a heart. Their hearts are dying. They want to get out. They want to love loudly. They want somebody to recognize them. They want somebody to look at them. They want somebody to look in their eyes and say, you are worthy and I love you. Can you do that? Can you look into a stranger's eyes? Can you look into one of your siblings' eyes? Can you look into someone's eyes and say, I love you? And not in a romantic way. Guys, love transforms. Love heals. And I say this on live. I know Chuck has heard me. I love you guys. I love every one of you. And if I can inspire you to do anything today, it's to love louder.
I want $1. I'll pull up next to her.
Nice. Holds a degree in business management from Clemson University. Owns Christian Family Automotive in Matthews, North Carolina. He's also a high-performance driving instructor and holds a competitive license with the National Auto Sports Association. And has spent the last 8 years as a storyteller in his church children's ministry. From the Competent Communication Manual, he's doing project number 6, Vocal Variety. His speech title is The Scary Moments. Please help me welcome Robert Summers.
Robert!
I'm sitting in an airport, getting ready to hop on a plane to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And this wave of panic, nauseating, anticipating panic just washes over me. So being a millennial, I turned to the psychotherapy of my people, and I posted on Facebook. The 3 scariest moments in my life. Asking my wife to marry me, quitting my job and starting a business, and what I'm about to do in Florida. Mr. Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters and guests, the 3 scariest moments of my life. The first time that I remember feeling this feeling was when I decided to ask my wife to marry me. Now, for those of you that don't understand that marriage is a really big commitment, I cannot help you in a 7-minute speech. Talk to me afterwards. But that was a terrifying moment for me. Not because I wasn't sure that she would say yes, I knew she would, but up until that point in my life, we were dating. I mean, not that I would, but if I wanted to walk away from that relationship, well, I could. But once you make that commitment to somebody, once you ask that person to marry you, your life moving forward looks a whole lot different, doesn't it? You know, I mean, I can't just walk away from that relationship, theoretically, once I've married that person. So I remember for about 4 weeks, just that nauseating fear, and then realizing that what I was doing was a good thing, and learning to push through that, and eventually asking my wife to marry me. Now, the second time I remember feeling that feeling was when I started my business. Now, it was about 6 months after I had asked my wife to marry me. I was 27 years old. Let me explain to you what this looked like in my life. I had about $30,000 in my bank. That was my life savings. That money came from my father when he passed away when I was 13 years old. And my grandfather had passed away when I was 8. This was literally the legacy that the two most important men in my life left everything. And you gotta understand something about our family. We don't have a family of risk takers. We don't have a family of entrepreneurs. Everybody in my family, successful or not, pretty much came from corporate America. So me being the black sheep in my family, decided to tell my mother one day, hey, I'm gonna quit my job, start a business, and I'm gonna use this money to do it. That conversation didn't go over too well in our family. It was a little bit rocky. But there's something that I've learned, and there's something that I believe. Successful people, successful entrepreneurs, do a really good job of understanding risk, mitigating the consequences, and then learning to push through those scary moments. I'll say that again. The most successful people I know understand the risks, mitigate the consequences, and then push through. And that's exactly what I did when I started my business. Now, what that looked like for me, I looked at probably 30 different industries. I wrote 8 or 9 different business plans, took the most logically successful one, and spent 2 years working on that. I looked at everything that I could from lots of different angles, looked at different finances. So when I got the phone call from the person who I was about to rent my space from, basically they told me, we've accepted your proposal, we're gonna lease you the building for the next 5 years. I hung up the phone and I started to cry like a child. Because I was at that moment again in my life. I mean, right up until that point, all I had was years of my time. I hadn't taken that money out of my bank account. I hadn't quit my job. But now was that moment where I had to put up or shut up. You know, I had to decide whether or not I was going to walk away or whether or not my life was going to look different going forward. Just like when I asked my wife to marry me, I was doing it all over again. Now, because I had analyzed the risk, mitigated the consequences as best I could, I pushed forward. So I was really surprised when I'm sitting in this airport, getting ready to hop on a plane to Fort Lauderdale 5 years later, because I was not asking someone to marry me, I was not starting a business, I was going to purchase my dream car. And it is a great, great car. Let me tell you about this car. After 5 years of making probably a third of what I could have made working for somebody else, after 5 years of working long hours, extra nights working on our business, we finally had a little bit of success, and I finally got to do something that I've always wanted to do. So my dream car, in case you're wondering, happens to be a 2005 Aston Martin DB9 V12. This is the James Bond car, in case you don't know. And in case I've lost somebody here, because my speech is entitled The 3 Scariest Moments of My Life, and you might be wondering why asking my wife to marry me, starting a business, and buying my dream car all fit into the thing. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. For 11 years, I've driven a 1999 Ford Explorer Sport with 280,000 miles on it. In the last 5 years, my wife and I have owned 9 vehicles. None of them cost more than $3,000. I have never had a car payment in my life. And this car costs more than I used to start my business 5 years ago. That's not the scary part. The scary part is I'm sitting in this airport realizing, Robert, you're about to buy a car you've never seen. And I don't mean I've never seen this car in Florida. I mean, I have never seen an Aston Aston Martin DB9 in person in my life. I've never sat in one. I've never driven it. I don't even know if I'm going to like this freaking thing. And I'm about to have the first car payment I've ever had in my entire life. So I took a little breather, got on the plane, took off. The plane caught fire. We turned around and landed again. That's a different speech. The next day, I got on another plane, bought my car, and drove it home. And I'm telling you, the same process applies when you're realizing your dreams as it does when you're starting your business, as it does when you're entering a relationship. Because even though I was doing something really honestly stupid, and I don't really do stupid financial things in my life, I still analyzed the risks. I knew the resale value on these cars. I knew if I hated it, I could turn around and sell it again. I'm a mechanic for a living. If something breaks, I can probably fix it. You know, I mean, chances are pretty good. This isn't as dumb of a decision as it sounds, although it possibly is. And I'll tell you, now that I've had the car for 10 days, I can tell you on the other end of this, just like asking my wife to marry me, just like starting a business, this car, once I pushed through, it was definitely worth it in the end. So I tell you this story, fellow Toastmasters, because I hope that it will encourage you wherever you are in your life. Analyze the risk, mitigate the consequences, but then you have to push through. You have to make sure that you're pushing through, and it is definitely worth it in the end. Thank you, fellow Toastmasters.